Hi everyone, just going to go over some of our info from last week and what is to come this week, as well as a few of our quiz questions. Last week we talked a bit about marketing overall, what types of things people are looking for in a healthcare organization, how their personal characteristics drive them to our organizations, etc. So it was really focused on that, kind of that patient as consumer side of the industry. So obviously you've all submitted your work already, so no worries there. If you have questions or need assistance with with something other than what we'll go over today, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you. So this coming week, we are going to be focusing more on strategy, market planning. Um, Strategic planning and marketing are kind of hand in hand. You likely have already taken, I think it's HCM 3700, which is the course specifically in strategic planning. I think that's the course 3700, but we do have a course focused solely on strategic planning. But I think what's important is to understand the tie between strategy and marketing. They're very closely tied, and when you do strategic planning, when you develop a strategy for your organization, marketing is a big piece of that. So we're going to do a little strategy related work this week, complete a SWOT analysis, um, those types of things. So, in our discussion board, we're going to talk a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy. It's interesting, as I looked at the classroom and thought about this week's assignment. You can even, and if you can easily find a way to do this, feel free. But I think about Maslow's hierarchy in relation to our current situation. Many of us are confined to our homes nationally, or and internationally. But thinking about our U.S. healthcare system, um, we're kind of confined to our homes, and we're not necessarily easily able to reach those higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy. So it's feel free to tie the discussion this week. It was meant to be tied just to healthcare generally, but feel free to tie it to our current situation and how that those two things kind of tie in together. You're also going to do a SWOT analysis. If you're currently working somewhere, in a healthcare organization or health related organization, please use your place of employment. But if you're not working, if you're a full time student or not working in healthcare, do a SWOT analysis on maybe where you've received care, somewhere that you're familiar with. Um, I don't want, you know, I know that you won't have I don't want you to struggle because you won't have the depth of information you would need, but through annual reports and through information freely available on the web, you should be able to find a good amount of information about any healthcare organization. So if you're struggling with that, once you get to that assignment, please let me know. But it's not a terribly long assignment, but a SWOT analysis I think it's important for you to be able to do that. And you may have already completed SWOT analysis or five forces analysis through your strategic market or strategic planning class. Also, this week, we're going to be submitting a topic for your final project. So your final project is going to be a marketing plan. So you'll be putting together a healthcare marketing plan for some type of service, or it can be for the entire organization, which would be pretty large if you're a health system, something like that. But it could just be for marketing a specific unit, a specific item, a specific service. Like a good example is, just today, I received an email from UPMC. Now I get emails from UPMC all the time. We see them all the time in in the marketplace with billboards and names on stadiums and such. But this was specific to the services that they're providing under the COVID-19 situation. So it talked about their Care Anywhere, or whatever they call their telehealth platform. It talked about the testing that they're doing, the new test that the PIT folks put together that they're doing through UPMC. So it was very focused on that, and so someone somewhere quickly put together a marketing plan that was focused on that particular activity. You can do something like that, very focused on a specific diagnosis, a specific type of service, a specific unit, or you can market it. Maybe if you work in a physician practice and it's fairly small, you could do a marketing plan that represented your entire organization. So, what for this week, all I'm looking at is, what is your marketing plan targeting, and what is the organization. One thing that I will I guess warn about is this isn't a business plan. So oftentimes I'll get to the point where I'll approve a topic, and then the marketing plan will be submitted and it's a business plan. And that's not what we're looking for here. I don't want the top to bottom business plan for something. I want to know how you're going to market it. So make sure you're choosing something that a marketing plan is appropriate for. So I think that's it. Let's hop over here to the quiz questions. So first one, who or what plays the central role for determining healthcare decisions for families? And the answer here is mother, interestingly enough. So obviously it was father, mother, insurance, or socioeconomic status. And if you if you think about the role of the mother in a family, they really are, they tend to be the folks that seek care more frequently. And then they do tend to be the ones, statistically that drive healthcare decision making for a family. So they drive where you're going to receive care, they drive when you're going to receive care, etc. So the other things play a role. Obviously, a dad would play a role, insurance would play a role, and we see that very much so here in this marketplace, or socioeconomic status will play a role as well. But the central role is really the mom of the family that is making those decisions regarding healthcare, mainly due to the role of the woman as the primary consumer of healthcare. Next question. What is the term to describe activities that encourage such practices as safer driving, tobacco cessation, lifelong exercise, and other similar activities? I did give credit on this question. It's just a kind of a crappy question. I apologize for that. What I was really driving for is what is the marketing term used for these things, and that's social marketing. So if you answered social marketing initially, you got that right. However, I realized that one of my distractors was health promotion, and those are all very much health promotion activities. So the fact that I left a word out in the stem of the question drove some of you to that other answer, health promotion. So social marketing is really about, and don't confuse it with social media marketing. I think a lot of people immediately see social marketing and they think social media. It's not necessarily so. It can be done in social media, but it can be done in print marketing, it can be done in public relation practices, it can be done on a billboard, wherever. But what it's really about is the work of an organization to market something that's greater than themselves. So the example I always give of social marketing is, if an organization decides to do maybe a mammography drive, really pushing people. You see this a lot in October for Breast Cancer Month, really pushing people to get out there and get mammograms. And their marketing typically is not around, please come to Hospital X for your mammogram. The marketing is usually around, please get out and get a mammogram wherever you can do that. And the general hope is, of course, that they'll come to your hospital, but we're really also looking to improve the health of the population, which involves people going to other hospitals as well. So that's really social marketing. It's driving a practice that will hopefully improve the health of the population, and hopefully will drive more folks to you as well, but not necessarily. That's not the point of it. The point is really that population health aspect. So I did give credit for health promotion, and I did give credit for social marketing was the correct answer, but I did give credit for health promotion there as well. Next one, what influences the likelihood that an individual will seek care? And the textbook talks at length about all of the different personal characteristics that will influence your you in seeking care. So things like age, gender, socioeconomic status, education, race, all of these different things that influence the likelihood that someone would seek care. The one question or the one answer that was chosen most frequently is reason seeking care. And that's not really, sadly, that's not really impacting the likelihood someone will seek care. So there are certain people with certain personal characteristics that will drive them to seek care for very minor issues that perhaps others wouldn't seek care for. And then on the flip side, there are people with certain personal characteristics that will be driven to not receive care, not seek out care for things that are very serious. So I think that's one of the things we're seeing right now in the materials coming from the government and from our healthcare organizations with regard to COVID-19 is that they're really encouraging people to seek care, typically via telehealth. But if you're having these symptoms, some shortness of breath, fever, dry cough, seek care in those instances. So for me, normally, if I had fever, shortness of breath, dry cough, I would not seek care. That's not something I would seek care for. But when I returned back from my trip to St. Louis last week, I did reach out to my physician and say, hey, I'm having these things, some pain in my chest, some coughing, and a fever. Is that a problem? And they said, quarantine at home. We're not going to test you. Blah blah blah. So normally I wouldn't have sought care in that instance, but the situation has driven that. Generally, that would be driven by your those personal characteristics. So normally I wouldn't seek care because that's something you can care for at home. It's not something I would need to see a physician for. There's likely nothing they'll be able to do for me. That's why I would not seek care in that instance. Whereas there are many people, I think of the, first time moms out there that, the first time the baby has the sniffles or is running a fever, they immediately run to the provider. And that's a personal characteristic. It's fear, but it's a personal characteristic in that first time mom, never dealt with the situation, will seek care for things that other people wouldn't. So the reason seeking care is really not a player in this. It's really more about the personal characteristics of that situation and of that person, what's going on there. Next one, race is one of the best personal characteristic predictors of healthcare usage, true or false? And this is false. And that's for a lot of different reasons. Race doesn't necessarily, it can be a part, but it's certainly not one of the best predictors. Race is not always clear, so we don't, we can make assumptions of race when we're looking at healthcare statistics, but we certainly, unless it's a study where that is a variable and was defined, we're not necessarily going to know that. And the lines, and this, it talks about it in the textbook, but the lines of race are becoming very blurred in most countries, where there's marriages of folks from different races and relationships of folks from different races. So it's not. Race is just not a good characteristic. What is a better characteristic, and I think the reason that some of you were driven to choose true in this, is socioeconomic status. I think that we see differences in socioeconomic status and access to care by race, unfortunately, in this country. And I think that those socioeconomic differences drive healthcare usage more than race does, particularly. So just think about, some of the areas in downtown Pittsburgh where they've closed hospitals, or they've closed clinics, and the folks that live in those areas. So, if a certain race is predominant in that area, it may look firsthand that, oh my gosh, well, it's race that's driving this lack of healthcare in the area, but it's not. It tends to be socioeconomic status, because there could be folks of all different races living there, and they're not going to be able to access healthcare. So it is a predictor, but it is not one of the best predictors. Some of the best predictors are age and gender to drive healthcare usage. But I think that when we're talking about access to care, one of the better predictors is socioeconomic status. And that's it. So let's go back here to the classroom. So like I said, we've got our discussion this week. We've got the SWOT analysis, and then for the final project submission, the topic, just a brief paragraph. You don't have to create a document or anything for it. You can just type it into the text box in Blackboard. That's fine. And then we have our quiz and our ed puzzle. So any questions, please just let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all in the classroom. Thanks.